Well, Charles, a little internet outage there.
That's all right.
It's always something, I tell you.
It's worth waiting for.
Right, and here we are, Sunday with Charles. I named this episode 3, Charles, because this is the third Star Wars themed episode that we've done here with Sunday with Charles.
It's very well done, and the art department was in overdrive, I guess, or warp speed, putting this together.
Exactly. There's quite a few nuggets in this we could go through if you like.
I think we should. I think the art department deserves full credit.
Well, thank you. This is, of course, the rise of ClusterF, and the hero of this new generation of Star Wars is Miss Lubrack, 1959, Nancy Pelosi herself. But of course, she's joined. This is my favorite addition to the poster. This is admittedly a new generation Star Wars character that I don't particularly care for, but the bug-eyed nature of Maz Kanata made her perfectly suited to be Adam Schiff.
Well done.
And we've got Browder Fett. Boba Fett with Bill Browder's face. And then I don't necessarily, this is like the guy who's the new pilot. I don't even know his name, Dak or something. That's Obama. We got Holder. We got all the winners here. Loretta Lynch, Andrew McCabe. Dopey. And then this is another great one.
I mean, that's fantastic.
Jabba the Hutt. Oh, and then Kylo Ren is Peter Struck.
That's really good.
And Emperor Sorostine.
There you go.
And what they don't realize, Charles, is that as in all Star Wars movies, if they attempt to strike Trump down, he will only become more powerful.
Yeah, no, this is just astounding. I don't know how the production department is going to figure out which of these many fantastic posters to put into the next version of the screensaver.
Actually, Charles, the most active department is the sleep deprivation department. They've been at it for sure. Now, I was a little preoccupied addressing the internet outage, but let's make sure we have the slides for today. How are you, Charles?
I'm very well, thanks, Jason.
Getting close to Christmas time.
It is. It's one of my favorite times of the year because so many people leave the city.
Right. I thought it would be some wonderfully festive holiday reason.
Well, I will say this, and I probably won't go to this, so this is safe for me to suggest it, that when I was a little kid, the second little church school I went to was called Grace Church School, and I was in the choir along with my brother, and what they would do, the big event of the year, which it's an old tradition, is to do Christmas Eve carol service, where they take these little choir, now boys and girls, when I went it was only choir boys, but and they take the littlest choir boy or person first.
Where's this story going, Charles?
No, it's really very nice. It's a beautiful church, Grace Church on 10th and Broadway.
Oh yeah, I know that church.
Yeah, it's really quite spectacular. And what they do is they used to dim the lights of the whole church, and then they put the choir in the corner in the room. I forget what it's called, off to the corner, and then they'd have they'd fling open the doors with the music. And the littlest choir person would come out, then up the height with candles, and then the evening is if you like this kind of stuff, it's the entire community is invited to sing along with the choir, and they it's a couple 90 minutes or 2 hours of singing, and it's really very, very festive. I think it starts around 6 o'clock typically.
Nice.
And so. That is one place that, from time to time, I go to that ceremony, and it's a surprising place because actually, what happened, of all things, I think this is the case that the most unlikely attendees ever showed up at that service a number of years ago, and they are
who is that?
Ken Starr and Monica Lewinsky both showed up at the service.
What?
Yeah. Because they were both, Star must have been visiting, and she was living in the area. It's a non.
Do they like? Oh, hi.
No, I mean she was pissed. Like, what are you doing here?
Right.
You stalking me?
You're right.
But drama aside, if you're looking for something to do, that's a fun thing to do.
I believe there's a school in that church as well. Some friends of mine from NYU went there for, I guess, grade school.
That's the school I went to.
Oh, there
Grace
you
Church
go.
School. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Not only do I believe there's a school there,
Yeah.
I went to that school.
Sorry, I was preoccupied with some other things when you were explaining that.
No, that school is an interesting school because it was founded in the 1880s or even before then, I think. And people don't understand. You remember perhaps from NYU film school days that
That's like, spitting distance from
I know.
NYU Film
I
School.
know.
Yeah.
I know. But in the early period in New York, the area around Grace Church was actually, very well established in the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, and afterwards. And then, as Manhattan moved up, the business districts moved up into the area now where 23rd Street area. It was always very fashionable. And then it went further north, and then it kind of went downhill. When I went, it was very much downhill.
Oh, I'm surprised.
Yeah, it was. I mean, but anyway, it's a nice ceremony. A long digression. Probably won't be singing any Star Wars songs on Christmas Eve, but
No, huh? What about the kazoo version of those Star Wars songs?
probably won't be doing that either.
I was trying to bring us over to the Grace Church, but it's like too much to handle right now. With
Too hot
Google
to
Earth.
handle.
It's a lot. So, well, Charles, we've got the slides ready, I believe.
Sure.
And there we
Sure.
are.
So we're going to spend some time talking about the degree to which in English soccer or football, I guess they call it own goal, where you score a goal on yourself, and that's basically what I think Nancy Pelosi's ploy here has done. I mean, this is the kind of move. If you want to say it's historic, it is historic, and that means that historians and hysterians will both be following this for decades to come, and they're going to look at this and they're going to say, now wait a minute. In this august chamber, the House of Representatives, they went after a president with no evidence, without a real crime listed. They rushed it through. They trampled over the minority in the House. They then said, we've got to do this as a matter of urgency, otherwise the president's going to steal the next election. Nancy Pelosi said, not in the impeachment process itself, but to the public, she said that Donald Trump is working for the Russians. And because it was so serious that they had to rush this through, they decided that they'd rush it through and then go on vacation until January 7th. And she's like a little kid. So, I've got my president and I'm not going to give it to you unless I want to give it to you. I mean, she's behaving not like a 78-year-old or whatever she is, but like a, 3-year-old kid.
I slightly disagree. This is a highly calculated maneuver. I think Nancy Pelosi knows the moment those articles of impeachment go to the Senate, they're going to be subjected to due process of law, and they will be absolutely decimated by a motion to dismiss.
Right, but the longer you leave, every day that passes, whatever the day was where they voted on this, every day that passes is you're, extending the time during which Donald Trump did not get a speedy trial, did not get due process. He looks dumber and dumber and dumber with each passing day. And the other issue is, generally speaking, when you've got strong cards to play, you play them immediately. You don't say, well, I think what I'll do is I'll torture the audience. If you're in a courtroom, you're trying to win as quickly as possible, either way, whether you're on defense or offense. And so this just telegraphs they have a horrible hand. This is not a time to play politics. That time is November 2020. This is a time to do the people's business. And what they're showing, I think, is that this is the last time. All Nancy Pelosi, all Democrats control now is the House. They don't control the Supreme Court. They don't control the Senate. They don't control the executive branch.
Right.
And what we're seeing is this is what happens when you let a bunch of ClusterFers get their hands on the car keys. Look at what they're doing. They're driving the American car into the sewer, not just the ditch. And having done that, having said that impeachment is a divisive process, it's going to lead the country to civil war, what they do, instead of resolving it and trying to work together, they say, no. Not only are we not going to tend to this till January 7th, unlike normal Americans who can't take 3 weeks off at Christmas, we're going to take 3 weeks off.
Right.
Because we're above the law.
Exactly, but nobody's above the law. This was really irritating me, Charles. I finally got Google Earth to cooperate, and here is the Grace Church.
Yeah, I'll just tell a small story. There used to be, where that blue stuff is,
That's some kind of
it's just covering over the stained glass. There used to be, that's the little chantry. When I tell a story about how when I was a little kid, you know, we would go, this is the main church here, and then over where the blue stuff is, there's a little chapel.
Yeah.
And that's when I was a kid, you have portions of the school, the lower school, the middle school, whatever, would gather in that chapel in the morning and get the news of the day. And that's the chapel where I was told about UNICEF.
Oh.
And it used to be that to the right of that building where the blue stuff is, there was a big tree. Mm-hmm. And the minister at the time, I think his name was Menifee, had a bunch of kids who were just out of control, wild. And what they would try to do...
Chain them to the tree.
No, they would try to climb up the tree and jump onto the church, which is not the smartest thing in the world to do.
Through the
and then to jump off the church onto the tree. And thankfully that tree is gone.
Well, thankfully we were able to get Google Earth to cooperate because you can't let these computers win, Charles.
No,
it's
you can't.
Easy to let them sort of overcome you with a sense of irritation.
Right. So I actually believe this impeachment thing is going to lead the Trump. We haven't seen all the polls, real polls yet. Mm-hmm. And remember, the challenge with polls is that it's not a simple case of saying, let's take the Democrats, let's take the Republicans, and figure out, you know, what people say. You've got to pick people who are going to vote, who honestly are going to vote, and you've got to make sure that the percentages are correct of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, which I think is very difficult to do. I think that people like me, who used to be counted in Republicans, I view myself as an independent. I think there are people in the Democratic Party, both on the rightward side of the Democratic Party, the Doug Schoen types, who are more economically conservative and who do believe in capitalism, they feel disaffected. And then I think the people on the hard left, probably like Bernie, who still calls himself an independent, they're somewhat disaffected. So the science or art, depending on how you want to think about it, of selecting who should be in the sample is very, very difficult. Accepting all those difficulties, I think the polls are already showing that where Trump was behind many of the supposed Democratic challengers in a general election assumed matchup, Trump is beating everybody. Trump's margin is widening. And the one thing that is certainly true is that the money margin is off the charts in the favor of Trump, forgetting his personal wealth.
What do you mean, just people contributing to the campaign?
Yeah, they're moved to contribute. People are looking, they've got hundreds of thousands of new people who are looking at this and saying that we can't have, I mean, if Nancy Pelosi and, if Democrats win in 2020, let's say, take control of the Senate, the full crazy that's on display in the House is going to go like bumper crop crazy into the Senate. And, next thing you know, it'll be, hey, Jason, guess what? Just give Washington, D.C. all your shit. I mean, that's because, you're obviously a millionaire and billionaire and, you don't need this stuff. You didn't build Crowdsource the Truth.
Yeah.
Just give it to Washington, D.C. So a full crazy can take care of it.
Unbelievable.
So I think things are moving actually in the right direction because of this. I also think the more I do think about this and look at the evidence that's for all of us to see, we're not in a place where you could just have, George Soros foot faulting in a tennis tournament and staying in the tennis tournament. Mm-hmm. You're in a place where Barr gave an interview recently where he specifically called out Soros.
He's been on fire, Barr, with the interviews.
We've got that link later on that.
With the Justice
But
Department.
I see opie-dopey Sessions as a big talker or a little talker and a do-nothing type of guy. Let's play along with the swamp because he's in the swamp. I don't see Barr as that kind of person. I see Barr, I know he's got the issues of having years ago worked in the CIA. I appreciate that he was under H.W. Bush decades ago. But in his current behavior, I see him much more as a person who understands his position in history, in critical juncture in history, that he is not somebody who's wet behind the ears in the law. He has a clear opportunity to be thought of in history as a goat and a demon if he doesn't do anything about this. Or alternatively, if he steps up into the role and says, all you pundits, you're pundits for a reason. You're not members, you're members of Hillary Clinton's bar, which is the big Chardonnay bottle that she carries around on her back. It's so big. You're not a member.
What are those dogs with the barrel? Like, I've never seen one of those dogs.
Saint Bernards,
except for in a cartoon, but they always have booze with them.
Yeah, Saint Bernards.
Why do they have the booze?
That's another
Joe?
school I'm familiar with, actually.
Saint Bernard School.
Yeah. It's a great school, actually. But so we're in a place now where indeed President Trump and his Attorney General and the entire world is now watching, because Americans have in the past politicians and leaders have in the past made a big deal, for example, about corruption. Pick Ukraine as one case in point. That's the center of this impeachment thing.
Yeah.
Americans go around saying, you other nations, you're so corrupt. We've got to clean up your corruption in Africa and Russia. And
By the way, give us $1 billion of the dollars.
to our vice president.
Yeah.
And his son, because he's got to have maintenance support pretty soon for this stripper kid that he's.
Those stripper kids, they like expensive stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You move in with Bill Clinton. But I do think, though, we're in a place where you can't go recede into the woodwork at this stage. You're either for Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Brennan and the corruption, because you want that for yourself, you want it for your family, and you want to burn America down by destroying the institutions, making a mockery of our Constitution, and surrender. You want to join John Kerry and the surrender monkeys, surrendering, which he was referred to as a cheese-eating surrender monkey.
Who called him that?
I forget.
What is that about?
French, cheese-eating surrender monkey, because they did such a great job of that to the Germans in World War II.
But is John Kerry French?
Yeah, oh yeah, he's got some French lineage.
Huh.
Yeah, he speaks fluent French. He chose Paris as the place to go to negotiate illegally an attempted surrender in the Vietnam War. Yeah, he's got horrible history.
Well, there was a whole Vietnam thing in Paris, right? Where some Vietnamese
Yeah, he went over there wearing his uniform and started bad-mouthing America. He's a cheese-eating surrender monkey.
Oh my God!
And his kids are involved in this
Burisma
and other things. I mean, so you're either with them, thinking that it's a great idea because big government doesn't work in the U.S. and doesn't work in the EU. Let's create a gigantic global government and turn it over to some idiot, to try to run and crush dissent using ever-strengthening technology tools. Let's do that. Let's not say we're the largest unified market in the world with the strongest military on the planet with defensible boundaries soon once we get a border wall. Rather than trying to run the entire planet, which is 70% water and 30% land, why does it make abundant sense for America to get government right inside the U.S., let these other people who want to mess around with, all over in far-flung places where we have no strategic interest. Let, How I Married My Mother Macron, let him, do all that stuff with Angela.
He is super weird.
He is definitely, he's unbelievably weird.
He's younger than me.
Yeah, and he's
how old is he, 41, 44?
I don't even know. I think he might be 40. And he's a Goldman Sachs trained banker. I mean, just the kind of person. The French market is a peanut in size compared to the American market. French military, great catering department. Yeah. But they have helped in certain places around the world. I don't mean to.
Yeah, no, I have come to enjoy France, but I will tell you the most commonly uttered phrase in Paris, at least, is "it's not possible." It's like, what are you talking about? Somebody landed a remote control car on Mars. You can't make the internet work in this hotel? It's not possible.
Not after 5.
Right.
That's I have to smoke my Gauloise. Right. But no, I think we're in a place now. The previous teams, both Team Bush, Team Clinton, Team Bush, Team H.W. Bush, Clinton, W. Bush, and Obama, we're all in for, this Constitution. We don't want a Constitution. We don't want no stinking Constitution. We like, a set of documents in Dutch and German and French or whatever that's probably 1,000 times as long as the Constitution, where America is relegated to the government that finances global government. And the whole system is set up to crush American industry, to shift American jobs to China and India. I mean, who wants that except the crooked globalists?
Charles, you've just caused me to remember something that we haven't really addressed barely at all. What about this USMCA? They seem to have sort of snuck it in under the wire while we were all talking about and worrying about the impeachment. Somebody said that it contains provisions for a supranational court that would supersede the laws of the United States. That doesn't sound good.
I haven't seen those details, so I don't know.
We got to look into that.
Yeah,
I want to try to find somebody who knows a lot about that USMCA. Maybe somebody who likes it and somebody who hates it, and talk to the both of them and see what's up.
Well, I think the general idea of trying to have a broader, better connected market involving the United States, Mexico, and Canada is not stupid. But to really make that work, we have to be sensible about, as I say in my original 10-point plan, you have to acknowledge that America is also the largest market for illegal drugs in the world. And you can't go caterwauling about narco this and narco that in Mexico if you have the largest market for illegal drugs in the world here in the United States. We've got to think this through properly. It is certainly in the interest of the United States to have a stable and thriving Mexico, indeed a Mexico that Mexicans want to stay in, and that maybe people in Central America might want to migrate to because there's opportunity. You want that. The Canadian market as well is highly restrictive, excessively burdened by taxation and bureaucracy. You'd like to see the Canadian market look towards Ireland as opposed to looking towards communist
or Cuba.
Or Cuba. No, in terms of lowering taxes, lowering regulation, encouraging competition. Instead, it's trying to protect Canadian businesses. But what are the great Canadian multinationals? That's right. Yeah. Not so many of them.
They don't make any cars in Canada.
Well, actually, what happened is when America was concerned that we would have communists take over in the United States, the big car companies moved to have some production in Canada, and so they.
But there's no Canadian mark, no brand.
No, that's what I was saying. I mean, I'm sure there are some fine Canadian companies, but Molson's beer, that's not Canadian. That's
I don't
owned by
really
America.
like Molson.
I used to like
Isn't it Canadian though?
I think it's owned. It's Molson Coors now or something.
Oh man, the Bob and Doug McKenzie would be upset. That definitely was Canadian at some point.
Yeah. So perhaps what we should do is we'll jump into the
next page.
Next page. I believe. Am I wrong that today is the first day of Hanukkah, or is it next week?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's coming up soon, so
we could Google that.
It's coming up soon.
It's hard to know when Jewish holidays arrive because there's a different Jewish calendar, so it sort of changes every year, and it's not that heavily publicized. The Hanukkah Commission is not.
There's no.
Yeah.
All right. So this is for the new people who we really appreciate the loyal viewers, and now the new people who are joining the show here, and I'm getting an increasing volume in my email and Twitter direct messages.
It is today.
Yeah. So,
happy Hanukkah, Charles.
Happy Hanukkah.
I should have put a menorah there.
You did. It's just very small.
It's the invisible menorah. Yeah. My mother will be disappointed.
Yeah. So, yes, to our Jewish friends, happy Hanukkah, which I think begins, doesn't it, as...
At sundown.
Sundown, which is imminent. Because
indeed, it'll happen during this show.
There you go. So what we've been trying to do here, and it's interesting, I remember when we got into this, or before we got into this, I had several meetings with very senior executives at Fox, and thinking through the best way of trying to explain this mess. And I could tell, that the approach, even the approach of an hour-long special, which is hard to do on a Fox, or a series of hour-long specials, I could tell that wasn't going to work. Because they were determined, as we were, sort of bouncing ideas around, they were, you got to understand, we have can only go for so long, and then there's going to be a commercial break, and this, and I'm like, that is not the way to do this, and fair and bad, and you've got to dumb it down and make it really simple. Well, yeah,
dumb it down so that people at Fox can understand.
Well, but it's a fair point to say that when you're trying to, if you cannot explain a complex complex thing in simple terms, you probably don't understand it as well as you should understand it. So it's fair to say that. But when I heard their reaction, and then I considered the fact that there were people, senior people above the level, I mean very senior people at Fox who are implicated in this. I quickly came to the conclusion that, of course, the other mainstream media is not going to cover it. There has to be a better way to do it. And then you came along.
There's got to be some jabroni out there.
Then you came along and we started, doing interviews, and you seemed interested in doing it, and I like doing this. And so I said, why don't we try it this way? Why don't we try it a different way? Let's see if it works. One of the whole cards that we have, Ace in the Hole cards, is that eventually the penny is going to drop. And once it does drop, then all these people, a lot of people around the world are going to be saying, how come nobody saw this before? And that's when somebody will say, well, actually, there are some people who saw this before, and there's a hell of a lot of volume out there of information and detail drawn from the public domain. And then the next level of questions will be, well, how come the government authorities didn't see this and do something about it? And then it's going to be because, well, how many of them are corrupt?
Right.
In how many countries? How epic is this corruption? I've had this reaction. Well, I won't mention the names, but I've had a large number of the people I talk to in the investigative journalism world will say to me when we get into it, well, this must be a very big conspiracy. I mean, how big a conspiracy could this be? And I said, very freaking large, like maybe the largest ever.
Yeah.
To sell globalism as a brilliant prescription to the masses, when in fact it's just like snake oil. I mean, there's nothing sensible about globalism for the average private sector worker in the key countries that that are the wealthiest in the world. It doesn't make any sense. This is you just saying to the workers, why don't you just acknowledge that instead of having a 40-year career where you get a pension, what you're going to be doing is training people in countries that don't respect the rules that we in theory have on the books to take your job, right? And then once you give up your job and your future and your pension and your wealth, then what we're going to do is we're going to bring in a yahoo like Bill de Blasio, clone him, put those type of people in charge of all the cities, so we have the violence in Chicago and Baltimore and New York, etc. That's the program of globalism and snake oil salesmanism that's out there, that we've been going through in these many videos. And I guess this is our 197th.
Oh, yeah.
And you, Jason, have put these all together for us in this wonderful playlist. It's funny, when you get the surface level anti-Sunday with Charles tweeters, they'll say, all right, so exactly what are you saying?
Like, sum it up in a tweet, Charles. 197 2-hour videos.
I don't see any details. So then I'll pick a few of those. I block a number of them, and then I'll pick one to spar with, and I'll say, okay, here's the playlist. And then you'll get the people who still want to mess around will say, well, there's too much on the playlist.
Oh.
Can't you,
Well,
so
it's not enough, it's too much. They want something to be just right. What they could do, Charles, is they could select their favorite one and come in here to the video description. They're going to find all of the sponsorship links in there, along with the link that says download Charles's presentation. If you click on that, it's going to bring you right to the PDF document, which you can read on screen. You can download to your own computer. You could print it out. You could mail it around to people. You could walk to Congress with it and hand it to people. You could get some hamsters and put it in the bottom of the hamster cage, whatever you want.
Yeah, it's getting cold. You could use it to start a fire.
Absolutely.
I mean, in a fireplace, of course, not on the street,
right.
not in a
We
trash
do
can.
not condone arson.
No.
No one should start fires other than in a fireplace at their own house. And don't deep fry your Christmas turkey
exactly
next to the house.
Right. But so the approach we take here, unlike the sound bites that are sandwiched between the MyPillow and the unpronounceable Dupuytren's contracture or whatever, these different medicines. There's something called Dupuytren's contracture where your hand goes like this. They have all these crazy ads now on Fox.
Wow. I was going to have a soundbite sandwich for lunch.
But instead of doing it that way, what we try to do here, these are messages into the wilderness that we're sending out to people who get the fact that something isn't working well, whether it's under Republicans, under Bush, under Obama. Things just haven't worked that well, and maybe we need to look at things differently. This is a show for you. So we've been looking at things differently. We found evidence that seems to explain to our satisfaction what some of the problems might be, what is underlying, what explains the motivation of behavior of people like Brennan and Comey and Mueller and these other, Schumer and these other people. We think we found the answer, and the answer is where the good people around the world and in this country who want to play by the rules have been playing by the rules. It's the people who are working for us in government who've decided, you know, those rules are to keep the voter down. They're not for us. You know, we create all these rules and regulations to make it very difficult for any of the politicians to be disciplined. Then we hold our politicians above the people, allow they and their family to steal as much as possible. And when time comes to hold them to account, we hear, oh, no, these are public servants. These are, it's divisive to accuse a public servant of theft and corruption. How could you look at this group? I mean, they're so devoted.
Isn't it the most absurd premise? I mean, it's like you can't even accuse someone of something because they're running for president or whatever nonsense they tried to...
Especially when you contrast it with Kavanaugh, right? You have a right to be believed if you're accusing Kavanaugh, but with the government, if you say that James Clapper is an idiotic thief and Brennan is a stupid, idiotic thief, oh boy, I mean, he's had a lifetime in public service. How could you say that? You know, and when you look at somebody like Dopey James, who didn't have a pot to piss in when he got into government, now he's living in a mansion with his Star Wars Lego toys.
Every Star Wars Lego set, exactly.
Right? He's probably very busy today at the movies.
We should go over to the Lego store in 23rd Street, see if he's there.
We will do that, actually.
Browsing the Lego.
Down on the floor.
They have individual bricks you can buy there.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
he's like, I'm missing a gray 4x1.
Right, he's thick as a brick.
Yeah.
But I mean, these people are Manny, Moe, and Mac. I mean, these are to think. I mean, honestly, you sit here and you say, you know, this whole period, the Russians have been out to get us. So what we've done under Obama is we took the 3 dumbest, most corrupt people we could find and put them in charge, put them on defense. The Russians are coming. We'll serve these bozos up to protect the American people. And now we're taking a hard look at what these bozos did. And, you know, Trump is taking his time because I think the rot is so deep and goes, you know, both parties, long periods of time. Once you rip this open and you look at, say, one gigantic pile of slush, the Clinton Foundation, you then have to turn your attention to the Obama Foundation, the McCain Institute, the Soros Open Society, the Gates Foundation. It's suddenly a very large mess. And so we've served up what we hope is a lot of good detail. Our primary audience in the beginning was the various FBI offices around the world, the equivalents in other countries, the Attorney General of various states, the Attorney General of the United States, the IRS. That was our primary audience. But we've been at this now. This is show 197.
It's a lot.
We want to make sure that the public gets into it too. And I think we're going to be in a place before long. I regularly get emails saying, you know, if I could only watch 3 shows, what should I watch? You know, and
Breaking Bad, Sunday with Charles,
Seinfeld,
yeah.
Curb Your Enthusiasm. No, of the shows you've done, you know, if I can only watch 3, which should I watch? And I'm actually going to write something like that up for people, like a dictionary of them or a guide to them. And I'm hopeful that through this process, I mean, frankly, there's some decent stuff on traditional offerings, but there's less and less gripping information out there. And once you get into this, you know, I've been at this now for 5 years. Once you get into, almost 5 years, when you get into the detail and you start considering that it affects many, many countries in the world, and therefore billions of people in the world, it's affecting America's standing in history, and it will affect America's future standing in history. Once you start appreciating that, I hope you'll enjoy going back over the ground, and then we can actually have some fun going back over. You know, once the mainstream will breathlessly report about this, you know, I can't wait for the first one out of the New York Times. The Clinton Foundation is much worse than we thought, says Paul Krugman or some, you know, other idiot who's been just letting this skate. You know, the Dean Backett, the head of
New York Times.
Yeah, the New York Times, who's, you know, writes an open letter to the world at large. And I've decided to publish Trump's income tax returns on the front page of the New York Times because it's so important.
It's illegal.
And I know it's also illegal, you moron.
Sorry to distract, Charles, but we've got some members of the audience who are curious about the Lego store. Interestingly, the Google Earth map seems to be photographing it. Oh.
It used to be a Fidelity there.
Yeah, we've just traveled through time by taking one step. So it used to be Fidelity, but then most of this map is showing it kind of under construction. Trust me, there is a Lego store right there on the corner of 23rd. Yeah. But anyway, we don't need to worry about James Comey's Lego collection.
So yeah, if people would like to send constructive comments, they can do it through my website, through each of our Twitter. Please do follow Jason on Twitter and me on Twitter. And I actually, when I started on Twitter, I didn't have that many followers. It took a while to build up. And now what I'm seeing, I get actually quite a lot of useful suggestions and retweets and whatever. It's very, very helpful, so thank you for those.
Yeah. Charles, there was a whole thing where, like, I think a lot of Saudi Arabian employees of Twitter have been kind of removed.
Off Twitter, yeah, because they were, sponsoring propaganda?
I have no idea. There was that one guy who was spying on people. I should research this a little bit more before I talk about it, but I heard that there were multiple Saudis who, something with Twitter, they were fired or
their accounts,
removed.
I think their accounts were removed from Twitter. Yeah.
What's that about?
I don't know. I mean, it probably has something to do with the shooting.
In Pensacola?
Yeah. So why don't we move then into the, we've got there's a lot of recent news to talk about, and we're going to spend some time on that, but then we have some new ground to go over, or some new old ground to go over with the Clinton Foundation. So a report came out, and I do not know anything about Tierney Real News Network, but this is a pretty interesting summary that a friend of ours brought to my attention this morning, and it deserves close reading.
I thought you were talking about the tyranny.
No,
Real News Network.
Peggy Traeger Tierney, whoever that may be. I don't know who she is, or if that's even her real name. But this is a summary of analysis implicating potentially a large number of swamp rats in both the Democrat and Republican Party, tying them to corruption, potential corruption in Ukraine and elsewhere. And it's some of the logical, it's never Trumpers and anti-Trumpers. Romney, Kerry, Biden, McCain, Pelosi, Schiff, Mueller, Soros, Brennan, McMaster, Obama, and Clinton. These are all people that this article links into very sketchy, and I think potentially corrupt on the billions of dollars. In some cases, suggesting that through a Latvian bank, they may have laundered hundreds of billions of dollars.
Wow.
Yeah, and what our mutual friend wondered is whether this isn't, tied into what Giuliani's been working on. People talk about Giuliani; they're really quite outrageous what the left will say about the right, and to a certain extent, vice versa. Yes, Giuliani's 75 years old. Yes, when you're 75 years old, you're beginning to come off your game a little bit.
He actually looks pretty good. I didn't realize he was 75.
Yeah, but the thing people need to remember, it's not like Rudy Giuliani, goes back to his studio apartment and, gets on the internet and is typing on an old, manual typewriter his conclusions. He's got a law firm. He's got an investigative firm. He's
tons of experience.
Tons of
prosecuting,
experience.
investigating. He knows a lot about the law, a lot about crime.
Yeah. And when he stands up there and says, I've been working on this, I think he's been working on it. He's been working on the Ukraine-related corruption for years.
Yeah.
In connection with his service for Trump for months. But he's very familiar. I mean, he put the mafia away here in New York for a time. And he's taken on some very tough customers and won. He did a good job with the city. Is he a cantankerous person? Yes. I mean, we're talking about New York City. It's not like New York City is not a place filled with Mr. Beans. I mean, or annual stubble bums. There are a lot of, try going to a good deli in New York City, and then sitting there when you get to the front of the line saying, well, I think I'm going to have... I mean, that's just not the way it works here.
Yeah, no.
People are rough.
Now, Charles, along the lines of getting good information from commenters, Concierge tells us that money laundering in Latvia and Ukraine has been going on since the 1940s, and CC has an excellent recommendation for Christmas gift for James Comey, the possibility of a Leavenworth Lego set.
That's a great idea.
That's a
I
good
like that idea. Or we could have a knitting contest to see who could knit the
Orange suit.
The fastest. I mean, like, he's a big dude.
He is. He's the big and tall prison outfit.
Yeah, exactly. So then there's this very interesting story in The Intercept. I'm trying to put here from a variety of sources. Each week when I do this, I try to pull sources from different leanings. So it's not only Fox or only Breitbart or whatever. Here's something in The Intercept. And saying that, and with some great credibility, that Mike Rogers has been cooperating with this Durham-related probe for some time. Remember, Mike Rogers is the one who went to visit Trump in Trump Tower in, I forget if it was November or December of 2016, and basically, I think it might have been November of 2016, and the next day,
he quit.
Trump moved out of Trump Tower into Bedminster. So I think this Rogers, who is head of the NSA, I mean, the NSA used to be something that no such agency, didn't even talk about it, and it was incredibly powerful place. My father was explaining to me that one of Bell Labs' big clients was NSA back in the day. So I mean, for this guy to watch the election happen. And apparently there are other reports that he approached the FISA court judge in October of 2016 and said, listen, this Collier lady who just stepped down, Rogers approached her and said, I don't like what I'm seeing here, and this guy sees everything as head of the NSA.
Right.
So for him to go cooperate with Durham and to have been cooperating for a long period of time should scare. I mean, ordinarily in these fights, what will happen is, the principals themselves will be full of piss and vinegar, thinking that they're absolutely right and they've got nothing to worry about. We're at a stage now, I think, where the firms that defend the James Comey and the Clapper and whoever else might be the subject of criminal prosecution at this point in time, the managing partners of those firms are the people who are going to be very clear-eyed, and they're going to look at this and say, now, wait a minute. This is not, we're not talking here about, somebody dropped through a corn husk over the fence and screwed up my prize rhododendron bush. I mean, we're talking here about very serious matters that never have come to this level in the United States of America, where it may have been the case that a former president and his quote loyal group of high people, senior level political bureaucrats, and people who were supposed to be apolitical, that those people may have concocted a fairy tale about a presidential campaign and then trained the instruments, the dread instruments, the most powerful instruments of our government, against first a candidate, and then after that candidate won, against an incumbent president, and then after he was sworn in, after an actual president, and that this might have continued for months and years and involved hundreds of millions all in, when you consider, if not more, of taxpayer money and billions, if not tens of billions of damage. This starts to get to be a place where, law firm over here, Lily White Law Firm, does not want to be the dumbass firm that then finds out in, say, 30 days, whoops, Comey's business is lying. That's what he does. He lies to Congress, he lies to the press, he lies to his wife, he lies to his kids. That's what he does for a living. He's a liar.
We'll move on and we won't lie again. That's what he was saying to Chris Wallace. I didn't say that.
I didn't say it,
Didn't mean what you think.
Right. Let's just move on. I got Legos to play.
Yeah. Now, Charles, I would like to tell everybody that Mel C has taken advantage of Super Chat.
Oh, nice.
Crowdsource the truth, too. Thank you, Mel C.
That's not Mel B, is it?
That's Spice Girls, I
right,
think.
No,
this is Mel C.
He's an even better singer.
Even better, right.
Thank you, Mel C.
Yeah, it's very good.
So the next thing, I mean, it could be that, when we hear these stories, and I know there are many, many hardworking people in, for example, the SEC, but then you hear these stories in the Washington Times and elsewhere that, people are so busy at the SEC watching porn that they're not going after GE and other companies that need to be going after it. But you think about the CIA, and you've got to believe that the CIA, I mean, if Rat Rodenstein and Mueller at the FBI and Comey at the Deputy Attorney General, and before that, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, is they were missing this Clinton fraud. The CIA had to notice a former president. It's not like Bill Clinton goes on trips and says, the first thing I want to do is atone for my sins, so why don't I go check into this monastery over here and like get those things that you put on somebody's back to pierce your skin, and give me one of these awful cloaks to go to a place where I don't talk, no food, and contemplate my navel for 10 days. And Bill Clinton's on road trip after road trip. The dancing girls are everywhere.
Right.
The opportunities for mayhem are everywhere. And you're telling me that our CIA did not notice a man who pardoned Mark Rich going around the world with a foundation that was supposed to be focused in Little Rock, doing all kinds of crap all over the world with no authority, raising hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, not accounting for it, opening up bank accounts, and the CIA didn't notice that?
Yeah.
Of course they noticed that.
Well, it's another one of these scenarios, Charles, where if they, either way, it's not good. If they didn't notice it, that means they're incompetent. And if they did notice it, that means they're complicit. So there's no good explanation.
Right. I got to believe that when it comes to a former president, a former president thinks, and I don't know if you've had this experience, maybe growing up you had it, but when you have help in your house, you start to realize that, you don't have any personal freedom in your house. I mean, privacy in your house. When you have other people living in your house, you've got to.
That's why I never wanted that.
Right. But I mean, it could work. You can make it work. But if you're the former president of the United States, and you don't, it's not like people pick Jason Goodman up in the morning and wrap you in a whatever in a protective cocoon and bacon, and then take you down to the cell and bring you to the White House and say you're president. I mean, you sit there, and if you're smart in the beginning, which some of them have not been, you say, why would I want this? You go through a calculation, you talk to your family, and you realize that, guess what? You're the designated shit recipient as President of the United States. If there's a problem, it's your fault, for while you're there. And then when you get out of being President of the United States, for the rest of your life thereafter, you will be under the control of the Secret Service. They're going to tell you, no, Jason, you can't go out at 11 o'clock tonight by yourself and go to Times Square and check it out. You're the former President of the United States. There are all kinds of terrorists who want to kill you.
Right.
And so why I bring that up is that there has to be a record of what the Secret Service knew and what the Department of Treasury knew about Bill Clinton's international trips from January 20th, 2001 to the present. And either that's a full and complete record, when we get to the days when he was on the 27 or 30 or 40 Epstein trips that we, don't know.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I could picture the Secret Service saying, no, Mr. Clinton, you can't throw that child out the back door of the 727.
But the point is there's a record, and it's either complete or it isn't complete. It's variance with other presidents, it's a variance with past practice. And if you have grown-ups, and there are grown-ups, who will look through this and will know. Like if you ask me to look at it, I can look at it, but I wouldn't know without taking a fair amount of time what is customary and what is not customary. Well, but if you had, like, I don't know if Dan Bongino's the best example.
Well, remember Gary Burns spoke to us.
Right, but I'm just saying, we get a few people who really do know. I mean, if you, as I did with the Clinton Foundation, if you tell me that this is a balance sheet for the Clinton Foundation, I take one look at it and say, no, it's not. It's a piece of garbage. It's not what it's supposed to be.
Not a legitimate balance sheet.
Similarly, you need to have somebody who could take the travel records of Bill Clinton and say, now, wait a minute. I mean, that's not the way it works. Presidents on international trips, former presidents, they have people go out beforehand, they case the joint. Right. No, he wouldn't be able to hang around in the airport at Heathrow and look at girly magazines. He's going to go to the VIP.
Wasn't he doing that, though?
I'm the one who caught him doing that in LaGuardia.
You saw him doing it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You saw Bill Clinton?
Absolutely.
What, I was sitting. Didn't say anything to him?
No, it was. It's the old. I think it was the old Delta terminal. I was flying to Columbus. And not Delta.
The Marine Air Terminal?
Not that one. It's another one. I forget which one it was, but I could picture it. And I was sitting there in those days I used to have a bagel and cream cheese and coffee, waiting for my flight at 10 or 10:30 or something like that. And I see the Hudson News or whatever.
Yeah.
Back then, I don't know if they still have it like this, but there's a section where there's Fortune and Forbes, and then there's a section where the girly magazines.
Put that filthy magazine down, you.
And he was maybe 60 feet away, 50 feet away from me, but I knew it was the section because the section was covered off.
Right.
Right. I mean, the front of the and he was sitting there going,
that's really crazy. No shame. No shame.
Oh man.
But anyway.
So then we have this. You mentioned this Dan Bongino interview. It's the fourth one down.
I listened to that interview.
And what did you think?
Interest. It sounded like they are both trying to promote the same story. I do not believe that Devin Nunes is presenting things accurately, and it just seemed very much of a pro-Devin Nunes, pro-Fox News. These guys aren't saying a word about Bill Browder. It was just a little bit of a congratulatory love fest between the two of them, and I need to listen to it again.
Well, so when we think about this period, 89 to the present, 91, 92 to the present, you mentioned Bill Browder.
Mm-hmm.
There are good and bad people, sadly mostly bad people, who looked at the Soviet Union implosion and said, some decent people said, well, they're going to be brilliant scientists and whatever, and let's figure out a way to come up with a business opportunity that makes sense and that is lawfully prosecuted. But too many people looked at this inside the former Soviet Union and Central Europe and outside and said, you know what, this is an opportunity to create mayhem and volatility and steal, and the women are beautiful around this region. Let's have some fun, party on, dude. And so when you look at this whole period, that's what I've been saying on our show and in the many columns I've done with Katerina Blanova and Sputnik. This is an academic project here where one should go, and when I used to be in the merger and acquisition world, we did this. You'd say, all right, there's a market for these type of privatization transactions. Let's look, we would call it's called a spreadsheet, where you take every single deal and you figure out the criteria that are important to evaluate a deal, and you put one piece of paper together. It can be a very lengthy, in the old days, it was these big sheets of paper, and you look at deal by deal by deal. What was the name of the deal? What was the date of the deal? How long did the deal take to get done? What was the value of it? Was that a good value? Was it a bad value? Who were the actors? How much money was raised? What happened subsequently? People need to go do that from the very beginning to the very end of this project to bring the former Soviet Union and Central Europe into the modern economy. Who feasted on that trough? It wasn't just Mark Rich. It wasn't just George Soros. It was Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs and law firms and accounting firms and investors. All sorts of people did this. And through all of that, a number of people came to realize that, rather than bid in a competitive auction, like you go to buy a painting in an auction, we're not going to do that.
Just buy the bank.
No, you buy the auctioneer.
That's what the guy did. Browder's friend Kordakovsky bought the bank that was auctioning off Yukos oil.
Right.
And then he rigged the auction.
Right. And so you could do a limited amount of that. I mean, you can go and you can start by doing that, but you get to a place eventually, once all the dust settles, where there are companies. Now you've got Yukos oil, and it's got to compete against Exxon. And it's got to, you get to a place where ultimately you actually do have to come up with a better product or service or find a better reserve to drill in or whatever. And this period, 92 to the present, has really been horrible. I mean, it could have been...
For who?
For America's reputation. I mean, we come across, with this guy, destabilizing the entire world. He's an American, naturalized American. And it's not just him, it's, what's his name, Mark Rich is dead, and there are other people. There's Jeffrey Sachs, who kicked out of Russia.
I don't know too much about him. The one good thing about George Soros, Charles?
He's not got many years left.
Well, no modifications needed to make him a creepy Star Wars character. It's just easy peasy, as they say.
Yeah. So I reserve judgment on this. When somebody stands up and defends Bill Browder, that's a problem for me because I know enough about his background or whatever. That's not going to be a plus. But remember that when we think through merger and acquisition transactions, especially leveraged ones involving international and multinational companies, that's not a province that most people have experience in. As it happens, I have a lot of experience in that area. So it's very easy for me to think about it. But if you're just sitting there, in line for your Chinese food here in Manhattan, some restaurant, you may have a view about it, but you're not going to really understand it. And so I don't know that a dairy farmer from California rising now to be minority leader in the Intelligence Committee in the House is, maybe he's got a great background. I just don't know.
I'm not impressed by Devin Nunes at all. The interview you've just reminded me was very focused on smearing Fusion GPS, which I don't have any desire to defend them, but I think they're trying to kind of spin it so that, Devin Nunes has said previously that he's suing Fusion GPS, and he took umbrage at the fact that Devin Nunes claims Fusion GPS smeared Bill Browder. Lee Stranahan has tweeted at Dan Bongino asking him why he never talks about Bill Browder, and Bongino blocked him for that.
Yeah, I've seen Browder on many Fox shows, and I don't understand defending Browder at all. But I suppose we should maybe just move on a little bit. What we're dealing with here, and we've talked about this in many other shows, is not a simple case of there's a Uranium One problem, there's a Ukraine problem. There is a deep state criminal conspiracy involving both parties, former presidents and their staffs of both parties going back decades, who have been, quote, smart enough to insert people into the various regulatory institutions, be they the Department of Justice, the IRS, the swamp, is filled with these organizations that have a powerful Republican and a powerful Democrat in them, so that when it comes time or comes close to maybe taking action, they're able to say, well, you really don't want to go there. It's mutually assured destruction.
Right.
And what I think Trump is trying to break through is say, no, we are going to destroy this. This cannot continue. We have more than $22 trillion in national debt. We have yawning government deficits. We've got rising nations like China and others. We've got mounting threats from terrorism. We cannot continue to let this happen. And not the least of which is that Trump is, if Trump were to say, I'm 73 or whatever he is now, and I'll have done my work, I'll have earned my retirement, more than earned my retirement. Not many people in America in the old days worked past 65. Here I am, multi-billionaire, and you're asking me to work another 5 years. If he were to stand back from the brink and say, you know what, I'm not going to run, then I would be extremely disappointed.
He's not going to do that.
I'm just saying, but he has not done that. And unless his health suffers, or unless, God forbid, somebody does something to him, he's in here. And if he's in the fight, and for him, there is not an option to lose. Because if he's bloodied in this fight and loses in November 2020, his fortune is finished. And his family's fortune, his family is going to be, so he's got a lot riding on this. And he is certainly a fighter and somebody who punches back much harder than whenever he's punched. So I am hoping that he's up to the fight. I'm hoping that the people, the viewers that are watching this, will encourage him to fight and help in the fight, because it even doesn't really particularly make much sense for people at the center of the criminal conspiracy to be at the center of the criminal conspiracy. Why would you want to believe that you could, for the rest of time, because that's what you have to do, cover up this fraud and corruption? It's not a fair...
Well, because the same crew has covered up so much other stuff, like the JFK assassination, 9/11, the Vegas shooting. They're all about covering up horrendous crap.
Right, but let's see if they can keep doing it, And so we've talked about this real whistleblower who went into Dopey James Comey, sent him a letter in January of 2011. This is somebody who, that is not how you spell Jared Kushner, so his name is spelled Jared, so I don't know what this, maybe that's a fake.
It might be some other Twitter, yeah.
No, there's a parody. But this purports to be an interview where Ratcliffe says he's got proof that they were doing something before July 31st, 2016, which of course they were. right? I mean, you've got to believe that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and their people, you know, if they're going to allow the president and the Secretary of State to use alias emails to communicate on government business involving classified information in as early as 2009, you have got to believe that they were thinking ahead and saying, we cannot lose, I got to win in 2012, and then we cannot allow a hostile president in 2016. So they got to believe that some of these people, even if they're not smart enough to, you know, to do this properly, to rig a primary and a general election, you got to believe that there were some people looking ahead and saying, you know, where are we vulnerable? And who might get us? And so what do we do to set up a way to stop ourselves from losing? And that did not just start in July 31st, 2016. We know, forget what I was doing, we know that other people had brought up all kinds of concerns. We know there is a real whistleblower who came forward in the State Department early in January, just as the FBI probe of the Clinton Foundation was starting out, and saying, hey, I have specific knowledge of Hillary Clinton's crimes. I want to go into a SCIF and make sure you have the level of classified standing to listen to what my evidence. I'm sending you a letter with tidbits, but let's go into a SCIF so I can tell you the real story. That's early in January 2016, a letter direct to Comey. Don't tell me that Comey only got involved July 31st, 2000. I know he's lazy, I know he's arrogant, I know he's stupid, but don't try to spin the story that Operation Crossfire Hurricane started July 31st. So John Durham absolutely has to know who this real whistleblower is. He's got to go see this whistleblower and his team and find out what was this person concerned about, and stitch it into the timeline. Mm-hmm. And then our friend, but you're know him better than I do, Michael Moore, not the enormous Michael Moore, but in terms of physical stature, but
true pundit Michael Moore.
Yeah, that John Solomon's reported that by February of 2016, the Latvian government had flagged suspicious payments and had started a conversation saying, you know, there's something fishy with Burisma. February of 2016. You're supposed to be investigating the Clinton Foundation. One of the large donors to the Clinton Foundation is Ukrainian, Viktor Pinchuk, with suspicious business dealings around the world. Don't tell me that there are no files. So today, we have a 3-part dump on the supposed investigation mounted to the Clinton Foundation in 2001 through 5. We've got nothing.
Today that happened?
No, the original we have in the past. But we do not yet have anything from the supposed FBI investigation. There's no FBI vault yet on the one that started January 2016. So don't tell me that nobody in the FBI today knows what the FBI actually was doing and who stopped the investigation from going forward at the speed it should have gone before it was open in January 2016. Don't tell me that there isn't that evidence. And don't tell me that when serious people, objective people, experienced in looking at FBI matters, look into the file, they're not going to see skid marks and other problems and missing evidence and a breach of protocol as this thing continued and got through the primaries to the anointing of Hillary Clinton and then into the general election contest. Just don't tell me that the Clinton Foundation investigation wasn't, I'm using this phrase, shouldn't use it, retarded. I mean that, not retarded and slowed down by the people of justice. Just don't try to sell that to me, because it's baloney.
Yeah.
And then this idea that we have this thing that Horowitz said, the next one down, Horowitz said that there was no evidence of political bias as all the pre-Buttle headlines came out saying that.
But he didn't say that. The headlines massaged what he said. There's no evidence of by pre-step in opening it.
Right, I understand. But we take a step back from all that and we say, no, wait a minute, right? You've got one investigation into Hillary Clinton for mishandling, where there's a possibility that if any agents did have bias of any kind, like let's say McCabe taking money from Terry McAuliffe, people like that, that you'd want to remove those people off the investigation. Then you got another investigation of Donald Trump and Crossfire Hurricane that happens after you bumble the Hillary Clinton investigation. So what we're going to do is we're going to put two obviously conflicted people, two people who love Hillary Clinton and in the first part, we're going to put Strzok and Page centrally involved in the campaign to whitewash Hillary Clinton so she can be president of the United States. And then once we get done bungling that, we'll then come up with a crooked investigation targeting Trump, and we'll have those same exact two people who, oh, by the way, happen to be cheating on their respective spouses.
Trustworthy.
That's just brilliant. I mean, there were some minor mistakes were made, but let's learn from this. Let's move on. I mean, this is just so far away. The same crowd that rightfully is bellyaching, more than bellyaching, screaming about Harvey Weinstein and Epstein and Clinton and Schneiderman and all this kind of stuff, and say, yeah, this behavior, this doesn't corrupt the workforce. To have married people cheating on their spouses involved in the most politically sensitive investigations in American history. That's the way we're going to run it at the FBI and the Department of Justice, while we simultaneously persecute Brett Kavanaugh for accusations that were made in high school that nobody seems to be able to verify. You're making a mockery of the system by doing this.
Well, and setting aside any personal feelings about adultery, some people may say, I don't care, other people may hate it. It makes those two people compromised, open to, I mean.
It's just, you don't, look, that stuff happens. I mean, I could say.
But you don't want your investigators, because someone will be like, we could tell your wife and don't investigate this.
Right, exactly. And what do you mean we could tell your wife? I mean,
right.
It's like, and so
send her the video.
And we hear, from others who shall remain nameless, that there's a culture down in Washington, D.C., in the swamp of this kind of behavior happening all the time. That's how they roll.
Yeah.
So now there's a blog I came across this. A friend sent this to us. I'm not going to explain the true significance of this. Next one down. But this is a blog by somebody who, you read it, he worked at Procter & Gamble for a long period of time.
Ooh.
And this is a good person.
17 mistakes.
And he's basically making the point in a lengthy blog post that in the real world, you don't get the chance to say, you've got an important job. You don't completely screw it up, have the eyes of the world focused on your company, and say, oh yeah, it was only 17 mistakes. It wasn't 117 or 1,000.
17 is a huge number.
Yeah, and it's a kind of point where you look at something where when there's a group effort where 17 mistakes are made, the proper response is to say, this didn't work. The team that was doing this, the entire team needs to be replaced. We need to learn from all of these mistakes. What does this say about the system? What does this say about whether there should be a FISA court? What does it say about, what do we need to tell people of the future when this happens? Do we want the message to be, it's okay, this team made 17 mistakes and nearly subverted the election of 2016, and we're just going to learn from them? Or do you want to say, 17 mistakes is 17 too many, and the 17 bumbleheads involved with this all were stripped of their pensions, all were removed, as quickly as can be. Then those who needed to be prosecuted were prosecuted, and where there were guidelines in how aggressively you might go after some of these crimes, we took the most aggressive possible. Then we sent them before hanging judges, and these people are down. It's Mary Gitmus, as somebody was saying on my Twitter feed.
Mary Gitmus.
These people
We've had a lot of good comments.
They're pretty funny.
Yes.
So, and that's this is a great American, actually, this person who wrote that. So then we have this latest thing. This Epstein, next one down. Yeah, the latest thing out of Epstein is hysterical.
They lost it and then they found it?
Then they found it.
We
lost it. We lost it.
Well, but, it sounds funny, Charles, but if I'm not mistaken, that in and of itself has rendered the evidence inadmissible because the chain of custody has been broken. So that's all they need to do with that.
Right, but again, here we have this gigantic, high-profile case, Hillary Clinton mishandling and Donald Trump crossfire hurricane. Now we've got Epstein, lost footage, everything's... what is it? It's as if, this is Gilligan's Island here.
Yeah.
This is the professor and Marianne are running around the island and,
Well, the lost footage, it sounds like an episode of Gilligan's Island. It's like, didn't the Honeymooners have a lost footage episode? In the 80s or something, they brought back the Honeymooners. So it's like the Jeffrey Epstein Christmas special live from his jail cell.
That's right.
Hanging the ornaments. Whoops, they didn't hang themselves. Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know what's going to happen with that, Charles. Every day it seems like nothing.
Yeah, I mean, the Keystone Cops were, levels ahead here. But really close on a serious note here. This final Justice Department link tells a tale of, when the Justice Department, here's Lynn Cawthorn in Shreveport, Louisiana. I know that's a town you want to retire in, you were telling me the other day.
Yeah, well, no, I got a soft spot in my heart for Shreveport.
You love the food.
Yeah.
But here's the case. I mean, I don't know if Lynn is a man or a woman, a man, who basically was using a charity to feather his personal nest. But we're talking here, he and his sister stole $536,000, okay? He faces 3 years in prison, $100,000 fine, and 1 year for $536,000.
Sounds like a profit. To me, yeah. Why don't they charge him $538,000 or something like that?
I don't know. But the point is, here's the Justice Department doing something about this. They operated United Citizens in Neighborhoods. So all these foundations, they sound wonderful. Boy, United Citizens in Neighborhoods. I'm for that. Let's send them $100. I mean, you're going to take this stuff seriously, but you're going to let Barack Obama fly around the world on a foundation that was set up to house presidential papers originally, but has now decided it's not going to do that. It was supposed to be operating in Chicago, but now he's flying around the world, Pasha class, to Kuala Lumpur with his wife and Singapore and doing these programs around the world. You're not going to go after the Obamas. You're not going to go after the Clintons. You're not going to go after the Bushes or Carter or whatever, because they're former presidents. And you want to telegraph to the world, to the fraudster community, that if you really want to fraud with impunity, run for president and win, and then for the rest of your life, you can steal as much money as you want through your foundation. I mean, but we're gonna nail Lynn Cawthorn and his sister. Huh. I actually think the other message is being sent here. I think the Justice Department and Barr are sending a message that don't come talking smack to us Clintons about, this is a small little deal and mistakes happen and it's only, for our entire life since 1997, October 23, we've never gotten anything right. But we're going to learn from these mistakes. We're going to move on. We'll run this better. You can't go after us. We're busy. I think the Justice Department is setting things up here for, it's ironic that people on the left are anti-coal, even clean coal. I think when the stockings get shaken open, whenever that happens, 24th, 25th next week, there's going to be a lot of coal in some Clinton
stockings,
Obama, Bush, and other stockings, I think, going forward. So we're running a little over on time, but I can go very quickly through these slides.
We started pretty late.
Oh, that's true. Okay. So what I thought I'd do here, remember I keep saying to people that there's evidence. The E in email stands for evidence. Well,
right.
The E in this whole process of the Clinton Foundation, there's a hell of a lot of evidence. And I've only begun revealing some of it. I have thousands, tens of thousands of pages of evidence drawn from the public domain. This is a case summary. This is drawn from a case summary. If you hit the find law thing up there, this is a case. Joe Conason characterizes Eugene M. Pfeiffer III as a difficult, right-wing, curmudgeon capitalist who's just holding up progress, unfairly holding up the situation in trying to move the Clinton Foundation forward off a dime. And perhaps, I don't know this gentleman, maybe he is difficult. If he is, hats off to me. And sometimes being difficult is a good thing, especially when you're being difficult to oppose corruption, for example. But this is a case, and there's a lot. I haven't gone in this presentation into the additional details that are in the public domain of this case. Letters back and forth, assertions back and forth, supporting materials back and forth. But if we go back into the slide, the case summary here states, the idea for the creation of the library began when, Jason? It's up there in the first sentence.
1992.
92, soon after he was elected in November of 1992. So there are a lot of records in the public domain of, in particular, Skip Rutherford, who became the first president of the Clinton Foundation eventually, working to try to market Little Rock and renovate this dilapidated portion of the town by ultimately siting the double wide trailer on the side of the Arkansas River.
It's riverfront property.
As riverfront property.
It's like a swamp. They got a swamp right there.
It was called, what was it called? Muddy Waters or something? There was a section of Little Rock that was all derelict.
Well, the Clintons don't want to drain the swamp. They want to build it up.
That's what, this is our swamp. We're like, we want to export the swamp. We're swamp rats.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this talks about, it says here flat out, the idea started in 1992. Well, if it started in 1992, why did you wait till October 23rd, 1997 to form a legal entity? What was all this work? What was going on from 1992 November to October 23, 1997? And I'll tell you what was going on. What was going on is just what Barack Obama and his people tried to do with Chicago when they get the Olympics to Chicago. It's just what George W. Bush and his people were doing at the Texas Ranger Stadium down there in Texas. If you have a big public works project in mind, it can change the face of a city like Little Rock, and it can encourage all kinds of projects. It could take slums, you tear them down, you put up, yuppie office buildings or yuppie apartments or whatever, and you can dramatically increase the value of the real estate. And if you know this is going to happen, you and your buddies can go and snap up this property, and you can snap stuff up for nothing that you then flip into the redevelopment and make a lot of money on it. So if there were a serious investigation of the Clinton Foundation redevelopment corruption project, you would be going into this admitted record. This is a court filing. I didn't make this up. Where they're saying, started in 1992. Okay, who are the people? What lots were bought?
What you've just described is exactly what they did with Whitewater.
I know. That's how they roll.
People don't even remember Whitewater.
Right, I know.
Because they've been so socially engineered. Just think, that was just a bad land deal. No, it wasn't. It was Bill Clinton misusing his power as the governor to create a state tax-funded project and do an off-ramp on a highway to a literal swamp that he owned with partners, and then developed it into land, just like you're saying.
Which to be fair, I mean, is the way a lot of, when you think about real estate development, that's the way a lot of it works. Ordinarily, it's not crooked.
But the governor can't invest in it.
Well, of course not. I'm just saying, but look at Lyndon Johnson, look at his real estate development. I'm not saying it's correct.
This is like the top 10 most crooked real estate development deals of all time.
We should have, the Oscars or the Swampsters or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, so you look at this, and down here it says, during 97, 98, 99, resolutions were passed. Here we see one, November 7th, 1997. Now, why is November 7th, 1997 an important date, Jason?
I can't say that I know.
The reason is the Clinton Foundation was incorporated on October 23rd, 1997, but bylaws were not adopted, and I don't think they were adopted by trustees, but they were not adopted until December 23rd, 1997. Is November 7th, 1997 before December 23rd, 1997?
Charles, Patrick Gordon has also utilized Super Chat to put in an excellent question. He heard yesterday that there were sources saying Obama also had a bathroom server, and he wants me to ask you, Charles, to refer to Dopey James Comey as Bitch Boy Corny.
Bitch Boy Corny, I like it.
Yeah, so that's a good use of Super Chat. Right
Bitch
there.
Boy Long Dog Corny.
Thank you, Patrick, for
that's a good one.
We can have a prize for the best use of Super Chat. That's the leader right now.
That's right. So, but on November 7th, 1997, there was no legal organization. So who was acting, supposedly, who was representing this organization? And again, if you had a real FBI, real agents, and there were reports in 2016 that 100 FBI agents were looking at this in January of 2016. If you had a real team, you go to the property records. I have a list of all the properties that were purchased. Okay, who sold them?
When did those FBI agents ask you anything about any of that?
I have heard nothing.
They just wanted to know about Dr. Corsi.
Yeah, about my trip. Yeah. We don't want to get to the heart of the issue. We'd like to bother you after you tell us that your wife is dying. We'd like to take time out of your ex-wife. We'd like to take time out of your day now, as you're trying to cope with your children and extended family and the fact that this lady's going to die. Instead, we want to ask you all kinds of absurd questions, and we don't want to listen to you tell us the real problem over here.
Yeah.
Look over here.
Yeah.
Anyway, this material is stuff that should be available easily to the FBI, and others. And it's also material that should have been explained in the application for federal tax exemption that was submitted on December 23rd, 1997, that all of this pre-existing work, the team around this Clinton Foundation, were all involved trying to make political supporters of the Clintons vast fortunes by redeveloping Little Rock. That should have been explained in the application, but of course it was all left out by accident. Now, yeah, and the application I'm talking about is down here in case people are interested. So if we go to the next page. Oop.
Is that the right one?
Is that the next page? Yeah, 5 is the next page.
Here we go.
All right. So with each one of these things, I assume that we have new people, and we've covered a lot of this kind of stuff before, but not in the same way. So when you, Jason, you know about this from setting up your company, when you set up a company separate and distinct from Jason Goodman, it has to have a federal employer ID number.
Yep.
So the one thing we know for certain off that application, because they provide the application in the preceding page, they provide the Clinton Foundation's application for a federal ID number, and that was, well, they make reference to the fact that they've applied for one on December 23rd, 1997. So they did not have a federal ID number until after the 23rd of December, 1997, which means that any action beforehand likely was not taken in the name of the corporation.
How can you even open a bank account without that? It's like the first thing they ask you for.
Well, because you're talking about you and me. We're not talking about Bill Clinton in Arkansas, right? And the other thing that's curious is without an ID number, federal ID, somehow they managed to have a post office box address. And in my experience, when you get a post office box, and the post office laws are in theory serious, you have to say if you're going to have a post office box address, every person who's going to be getting mail at that post office box address. They want to know that because it's a perfect way to launder money and use a post office box address as a way to open a bank account. So who opened this who got this post office box 1104, Little Rock 72203? When did they get it? Who got it? I think it's Skip Rutherford as a bet. But why did they get it? Who did they say was going to use it? And how much before the 23rd of December 1997 did they get it? How many bank accounts were opened using that post office box address, in what names? Right? So if we go, I think may not have shown this before. If we see this third link here, November 7th, 1997, somehow, I don't think C-SPAN stuff happens just willy-nilly. I think you have to talk to C-SPAN. This is the day after the Clintons got back from the opening of the George H.W. Bush Library. The next day they announce the selection of the Little Rock location. And here's Skip Rutherford. We won't hit the link, or you could hit it, but it's 10 minutes. We don't want to.
This video here?
Yeah. Here's Skip Rutherford. In a
what is this Tocqueville contest?
I don't know what that is.
That's a restaurant, isn't it?
I don't know what, but this is Mr. Rutherford talked about the process for selecting the location. I don't know if you can move it forward.
Sure.
Maybe this is.
Where's Skip Rutherford?
Yeah, this is him. He's here. Look, here he is.
That's a man, baby.
There's Skip.
There he is. Okay.
Yeah. But the point is, this C-SPAN thing, the FBI again could figure out when was it organized, how far in advance did they book this appointment, did they put any conditions on the interviewer? Remember, Bill is President of the United States at this point. What representations were made by Skip Rutherford to get the interview? How come all this work was done and there was no legal corporation? How could he be saying that the library did anything? It didn't exist as a legal entity. What role did Bill and Hillary Clinton have in selecting the site? Because they're not named as officers or trustees or even in the corporation documents or the federal tax exemption application. What role did they have? So here's, I didn't make this up. Jason didn't mock this up and create, this is an actual real clip off the internet of something that happened on November 7th, 1997. Now let's go back into the slide. And here we have an actual entry. If we hit first, this is a useful website, if you just hit that one, and I hope it works. This is the city of Little Rock. If you want to search in the city of Little Rock, all the references that are out there, and you're not going to be able to scrub them, so don't even try at this point.
It doesn't seem to be working.
It might take a little while. It's down here loading.
It's got to come all the way from Little Rock.
Yeah, here it is. So you could, for example, if you punch in Rutherford
B. Hayes.
and Clinton.
Oh, sorry. Plus?
No, just Clinton. You should get, well,
Clerk records.
there's all sorts of ways you can go through this. You can go Clinton Presidential, Clinton Library, Skip Rutherford, whatever. There are tens of pages of references in this early time frame that show that entities of various names were getting shit done in Little Rock when the entity was not properly organized as the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. There's tremendous documentary evidence in here. This is just City of Little Rock. You can do the same thing for Arkansas. You could do the same thing for Pulaski County. You could do the same thing for the Circuit Court and other things in Arkansas and elsewhere in Arkansas where they bought property and shouldn't have. So there's a hell of a lot of evidence in here. And go back into the slide. Well, actually, that's a good one, if you can hit this one.
Which one?
Yeah. Yeah, right there.
Okay. This 11/7.
Yeah, November 7th, 1997.
Is it opening?
It's coming up in the bottom. There it is. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Did I make this up? I don't think so. At 4:30, Mayor Daley announced the purpose of the special meeting. Mayor Daley said he had received word from Skip Rutherford, local coordinator for the Presidential Library, at 7:00 a.m. That President and Mrs. Clinton had selected the site along the Arkansas River. Now let's think about this. This is the 7th of November. 7:00 in Little Rock is 8:00 in Washington, D.C.
Ooh, 7th of November at 7:00 in 1997. They're doing something with that, Charles.
Could be. But the point is, Jason, it's 8:00 in the morning, Washington, D.C., and he's in an interview with C-SPAN later that morning. Skip Rutherford is explaining this decision.
Huh.
So how, it says here that who selected the site along the Arkansas River? President and Mrs. Clinton. Now, of the various things that matter in a presidential library, perhaps the most important thing would be, where is the fucking thing going to be cited? And who made that decision? It wasn't the Board of Trustees, because it didn't exist. There were no bylaws. It's Bill and Hillary Clinton making this decision. And is that explained in the application for federal tax exemption, that the Clinton family are going to basically do whatever they want with this legal entity because it's their entity, it's his name or whatever? That's not explained. That guts the premise of being a public charity. A public charity is not allowed to be dominated by an individual family, in this case, Bill, or supposed family, Bill and Hillary Clinton. But I didn't make this up, this is in the files now. You think about it, the team that couldn't rig the general election but did rig the primary did such a horrible job of it. You would have thought that this team in their home state of Little Rock would by now have said, you know what, there's this dude who's persistent as fuck and he's done 197 videos. He's going to look into the file. We better deep six this file here. They haven't done it. Here it is. There was no independent entity before December 23rd, 1997. This application is a crock of shit. It's a crock of Arkansas River bilge water, the application. It's all wrong, right? And Rosenstein and Comey and Mueller, they could have found this 2001 to 2005. They should have seen it. Comey, walks around like a peacock, acting like he's really smart. He lies with impunity. He didn't see this. He's a lawyer. He's teaching law from time to time. He didn't see any of this as the lead attorney investigating whether or not Bill and Hillary Clinton were involved in corruption using their library. He didn't see this?
I don't know.
Yeah. So let's go back into the slide. So there's been no examination of the property records. There's been no examination, as I think there should be. If you're sitting there and you win an election, your AOC, and she decides she pick, I don't know, a fancy store where young ladies would want to shop today, go to Prada, let's say. And the representative from Prada stops by, AOC's hood, wherever that may be in her district, and says, you know what, you just won an election, it's very important that you go to Washington, D.C. dressing well. We'd like to give you, there's these floor samples, these handbags that, you know, basically we're going to throw out, and we'd just like to give you 100 of them. Each bag is $5,000. We'd just like to give them to you because we were going to throw them out, and you know, we care about the environment. We wouldn't want to. Why don't you just take them? I mean, you can't do that, and I don't think you should be able, as President of the United States, to have Williams and Connolly and Skadden Arps and these big law firms who, if you or I wanted to hire them, would not say, oh yeah, we'll let you not pay our bills for, say, 8 years, and we'll let you run up, I don't know, 10 million at one place. I'm making these numbers up, but directionally 10 at one, 4 at another, because you're President of the United States, and we know you're going to have this crooked foundation you're going to set up, because actually we're going to help you do it as Williams and Connolly, and we know you're going to have money to pay us back because we're going to arrange the book deals. Yeah. You can't do. There's been no examination of this, and there has to be. You know, if for a lot of reasons, not simply because I'm picking on the Clintons and the Obamas and the Bushes. You know, Barack got a book deal, Michelle got a book deal, George W. got a book deal, Laura got a book deal, Bill gets a book deal, Hillary gets a book deal,
Oprah
Chelsea gets a book deal.
You get a book deal, you get a book deal, everybody gets a book deal.
Right. And, you know, you talk to the various authors that we know, and I know, you know, people who are struggling authors, and I know people who, I know James Patterson, CEO. It's not that easy. I'd say, I put it differently, it's impossible to justify giving Michelle and Barack a $60 million book deal. I mean, nobody is going to read Barack Obama's. Not enough people are going to read Barack Obama, I this, my that, legacy this book. You know, they're just not. But
realistically, without, you know, people will say, oh, you don't like Obama. Has any book like that ever sold to the tune of $65 million? Like Harry Potter makes $65 million.
That's fiction.
Right.
Well, maybe no Barack Obama's will be fiction too.
Right. No book about any president is making $65 million bucks.
Well, you know, what I hear, sadly, it's a sad state of affairs in this great country that, you know, if you want to write about fiction or entertainment or, you know, whether it's men or women or whatever, sex and misadventures, yeah, you can easily do $1 billion book project with, but you want to write anything true, i.e. nonfiction, supposedly, that's very difficult. I mean, to have a nonfiction book sell 50,000 copies is highly unusual.
Well, what's that sex book about Dorian Gray, Black is the New Gray, or Shades of Gray?
Yeah, Shades of Gray, which is horribly written.
Yeah. Maybe Obama will write that.
Shades of Corruption.
Will buy the book.
Or we'll get Joe Biden writes his book, My Shades, or Aviator Shades. So anyway, there's no organization, and in fact, the IRS application says one existed, but Skip Rutherford, the first or second dean of the Clinton School of Public Service, ultimately, he and Pryor, I believe, David Pryor, another trustee, put a form into Michigan under penalties of perjury, and I think also to Minnesota, saying there was no organization in 1997. So you're telling the IRS one thing, and you're telling states across state lines using the mail another thing. So, and the reason they're saying to the IRS that an organization exists is that you can only apply for federal tax exemption if it exists. The reason you're saying to the states that it doesn't exist is you didn't fill the paperwork out for 1997 in those states and in many other places, and you're in big trouble. Yeah. So, you know, you can't have it both ways. Also, the bylaws are supposed to be, they're verified by the very suspicious Skip Rutherford, whose position in Little Rock seems to be as a promoter of tourism to the swamp. You know, he signs off. Yeah, I verified these bylaws were signed. Yeah, I did that. You know, because I'll do anything. I'll sign anything. But I call bullshit on it. I don't think the trustees got together and had a serious organizational meeting by December 23rd, 1997. I think quite the opposite happened. I think Williams and Connolly were sitting there saying, holy shit, you know, Bill Clinton is now, you know, the dam has burst. We have now Paula Jones going forward. We've got other problems. We've got Monica Lewinsky. We've got, you know, corruption allegations. We've got Charlie Tree. The defense trust is blowing up.
Nothing big ever happened as a result of Charlie Tree, did it?
Some, I think, various and sundry people there went to jail or were fined. But my point is, you're sitting there as the managing partner of Williams and Connolly, and you're saying, you know what, this idea of credit for the Clintons forever, maybe we ought to stop that. Maybe you ought to be sure that we can get paid. And maybe one way to get paid is to organize a crooked foundation that's leaky as hell. And we'll make sure, why don't we house that in our office, or at least have hooks into it so we know how much money goes towards it. So
people suggest that Obama's book should be called 50 Shades of Gay.
Oh, no. That's mean.
Well,
at this time of year, the first evening of Hanukkah, you want to go there?
Hey, you know, that's the chat.
All right, okay. Anyway, so we don't know, in the case of the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, it was supposed to be an Arkansas nonprofit, and back in October of 1997 and afterwards, you had a process you were supposed to follow. You're supposed to apply for exemption from Arkansas state taxes, and we're going to see a second why this is relevant. There's no evidence I've been able to find that they ever did apply to be an Arkansas nonprofit. We don't know. In 1998, when they get around in 99 to talking about how much money they raised in 98, the biggest contribution is $2.3 million. We don't yet know with precision. The FBI should know, Comey should know, Rosenstein should know, and Mueller should know. Where did that $2.3 million come from in 1998? My suspicion is the second Clinton inaugural committee, which has never accounted for more than $10 million that seems to be missing. And remember, this is money that was very useful. Law firms need to be paid off. Private investigators need to be paid to threaten witnesses. I mean, if that happened. And there needs to be an accounting for this. And I can't go into Washington, D.C., pull these records out, but the FBI should be able to do that. And the FBI should have done that back in 2001. So there's never been a tax return filed for the crucial period, October 23rd, 1997 to 31 December. It hasn't been filed. I mean, you should at least at this stage, go to Ranbaxy, the crooked drug company that had this department that manufactured historical invoices and reports and approvals.
That's
Get
amazing.
that system to go say, that 97 return, yeah, we did file it, but we misplaced it. When the billing records came back, actually, we found that return, and we found it with the missing Rose Law Firm billing records, but we didn't know where to put it until now. So here it is. I mean, this thing, there's no statute of limitations, I'm told, if you fail to file a tax return when you should have, and when you were under obligation to file. And in this case, they absolutely had to file a tax return. And they had to explain when they got this commitment from the second Clinton Inauguration Committee, which I submit they must have gotten before October 23rd, 1997.
I actually have a sensible explanation for this. It was filed under you for you're going to jail.
That's right.
So they couldn't find it.
Okay.
Next page.
Yes, sir.
See, it's sometimes tough to know. Where's the mouse? There's another problem. There we go.
All right. So, Jason, this is going to defy typical logic because, I've said before, I'm a redist. Red is bad.
Right.
A lot of red on this page. Okay? They never used in any tax filing the actual legal name of the entity. They never used the legal address. They never made any truthful disclosures about whether they'd made organization changes, new subsidiaries, new activity changes, none of that. Never said anything about their government grants, which they had to do, including the consideration and dispensation they got from the city of Little Rock to, in the construction of the facility, how much city of Little Rock money was spent to improve the site, for various and sundry reasons. Were any of the City of Little Rock transactions arm's length? None of that's been accounted for. None of it about their filings in many states is truthful. And most importantly, remember I said this is a public charity. A public charity gives its donors, when a donor gives $100,000 to a public charity, they can take a large percentage of that donation as a deduction, depending on their other income and whatever, a larger percentage than if it were a private foundation. So it's a very significant thing if you're an individual to be giving to a public charity as opposed to a private foundation.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and you have to check the paperwork carefully. So the Clinton Foundation holds itself out and says, we are a public charity. And then there's this Schedule A filing where you do a whole bunch of complicated math and you say, see, the math says I'm a public charity. None of that's right. It's not a public charity. The math isn't right. The Schedule A isn't right. Now, in this whole time frame, 98 to 2004, you had to have an independent firm, and BKD is not an independent firm.
Why are they not independent?
Because they're so crooked at this point that they can't make a truly independent determination of the status of these financial statements because they've missed so many different things.
Huh.
And they continue to allow their name to be associated with it. You'd have to, I suppose you could try to make the argument that you in 99, let's say, 98, their name is connected to it. 99, time comes to do the report, and you'd say, well, I know we put our name on the tax return that was all wrong. And I know we said there was an audit in the tax return, but there wasn't one. And I know that none of the math is right. And I know that this isn't a nonprofit corporation, though we're going to say it's a nonprofit corporation. So the way I'm going to do this, the workaround is I'll find the other dumbass in the Little Rock office, or we'll go to some other office and say, don't look at any of these problems. Just assume that they're not there.
Here's some tickets to the Mizzou game.
Yeah, the Mizzou game. And just, we'll give you a promotion if you just put your John Hancock on the tax return here.
But I mean, when it says independent, if it's a separate company, how do they determine what makes it independent?
Well, that's a great question, and there are actual accountants in these generally accepted accounting standards. There's I think it's AU 250 or something. Right? There is an actual standard that tells you what you need to do to actually render an opinion. You have to be in a position. You can't take an assignment where you're going to cover up your mistakes, which is in essence what they'd be doing here. So they should have long ago. Well, the other problem that they would have had is that it would have been nice to be licensed in the state as BKD. That would
that's a minor detail. Charles, you're so focused on the details.
I know. It's like traffic tickets.
Please.
So they had to have an audit for 98, 99, 2000. As far as I can tell, they'd got no audit. They did try to submit one for 2001, 2, 3, and 4, but none of, obviously the first 3 years it's not compliant. And the audits, we've been through this one before, in 1, 2, and 3, and 4, say in the important sections, this audit is not in compliance with auditing standards in the United States of America. Maybe that's why Bill was doing all that international work. He's saying, look, I can't get an audit in the United States of America, so I'll just do all this international work, do more good than bad, and that's the way I'll talk it through.
But Charles, if somebody hands you an audit that says this was prepared with accounting that's not legal in the United States, isn't that like getting a hamburger in a wrapper that says caution, do not eat?
I've actually several times been in situations long ago where an analogous thing happens. And what I do in situations like that, when I was on turf I controlled, is I say, excuse me, Jason, I have to leave the room. And then I go out to my office.
Return.
No, I go to the office. I call security. I tell security, please immediately go to the conference room, and without telling people why, remove everybody from the building who was in that room. Mm-hmm. And I don't explain why.
And you don't return to the
conference?
No, I don't. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I did that several times.
And what happened to those people who were...
Well, I mean, one was somebody who came in essence, from Arkansas. Was asking our firm whether we wanted to engage in committing a crime to help them.
Really?
Yeah.
What? How stupid is this person?
I mean, it's, fraudsters are bold.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So during the early period, Bill's president, 98, 99, 2000, so perhaps the assumption is, okay, Bill's president, he's got Arkansas wired. Nobody's going to do anything about this. And he was impeached, but he was not removed from office, so he's on top of his game. Now, the Clinton Foundation was not under investigation while Bill was president, but within a month, actually within, less than a month after Bill Clinton left the White House in disgrace, I would argue, the Clinton Foundation, Bill and Hillary, were each under investigation ultimately by Dopey James Comey at the end of 2001.
But wait a minute, isn't it actually James the Bitch Comey or
Oh
whatever?
yeah, exactly. Corny. Sorry,
Corny,
I got that
right.
Bitch boy corny.
Bitch boy Corny.
Right.
You know, he's brought in after 9/11 to make sure that nobody gets to the bottom of the Clinton Foundation. But anyway, so that's a dynamic that happens. And Lois Lerner, this person who was allowed to kind of leak out May 9th or thereabouts, 2013, after Obama wins re-election, well, we might have been spying on some conservatives. You know, then on the 13th, well, Rambaxi had to pay a $500 million fine, but we're not going to explain exactly why that happened.
That's a huge fine.
Yeah, and then people are going batshit justifiably crazy over it, and Lois Lerner ultimately goes before Congress and says, I did absolutely nothing wrong for this reason and that reason, and now I'm going to plead the fifth. and the Congress said, okay, that's fine. You could do that. I mean, this is to understand what these people are trying to cover up. You can't just go back to 2016 in January or 15. You've got to go way, way back.
Yeah.
And a real report has got to lay this all bare. And the people who are involved here have got a lot to hide are Mueller, Cornyn, Rosenstein, the Clintons, Bruce Lindsay, Kessel, the CFO, many, many employees in our Justice Department, the IRS, and in foreign governments all over the world have been trying to cover this up. So let's go to the next page. Okay. So this is from the Clinton Foundation freaking website. You know, this is not Charles Ortel inventing this stuff. This is the actual Clinton Foundation says that when Bill left the White House in 2001, he created this Clinton HIV/AIDS initiative after the prime minister of some small place, St. Kitts and Nevis, asked Clinton to do it, right? It also says that he set up this thing in Harlem. Doesn't say the date exactly, but you piece it together, 2001. We're going to show you in a second why this is very significant, but Bill is not actually named as an officer of a trustee of any part of the Clinton Foundation until 2009. So you don't get the right. Remember, individuals don't get tax exemption. That's not the way it works. Organizations have to get tax exemption. But Bill and Hillary knew that they were moving from the crooked swamp of Little Rock to the crookeder swamp of Manhattan and Chappaqua. They knew that with Hillary as the junior senator and likely future presidential candidate from New York, nobody was going to touch them. So they put this crap up on the website. It's still up on the website. Today, when I tried to access it, and if we do it in a second, you'll see that we're going to get requests for donations. They're illegally soliciting donations right now.
Hit it?
Yeah.
I was just typing a response in the chat to someone who said, wasn't the Trump Foundation literally shut down for fraud? Yeah.
Don't exit out. This is a solicitation right now. This is happening. We're not doing it. They're doing it.
And they highlight $25 for some reason.
And they say, make a tax-deductible gift, implying that this can be tax-deductible.
Now, wait a minute. Were those people wearing anti-Trump shirts?
I don't know. But here, there's no such thing as the Clinton Foundation. There's no entity called the Clinton Foundation, lawfully anywhere in the world. And you know, anybody who goes to the site at any time until they take this out, but if you go to the preceding one, they're advertising the Clinton Global Initiative University, which certainly doesn't exist. Never has existed. That, to the question of the Trump Foundation, this Clinton Global Initiative University is much bigger than the Trump Foundation, Trump University, and it's never existed.
Well, so it's Firewalker 7 is saying that the Trump Foundation was ordered to attend classes on how to not defraud a charity. The thing that Firewalker 7 doesn't understand is that the point that you're raising, if I understand it correctly, Charles, is that yes, there was a problem with the Trump Foundation. Trump responded to it by paying the fine and getting it in order by shutting it down. The question that we're posing is why was that immediately seized upon for a tiny little, compared to the Clintons, discrepancy, and all of the charges that Firewalker 7 is blasting into the chat here in the ignorant way that person is, why was similar scrutiny not placed upon the Clinton Foundation for its much larger frauds?
Exactly. That's a good question, Jason. And we're not saying, you know, and just to refresh everyone's memory, I did not vote for Donald Trump in 2016. I didn't vote in the election for just this reason, so that people like this person cannot win an argument that this is partisan.
Well, this
and the
person
point,
is-
but the point here is that charity fraud's bad. If you want to get into contrasting Trump University and the Trump Foundation with the Clinton Foundation, an important thing to understand is that the Trump Foundation was one primarily funded by the Trump family. It was not a situation where billions of dollars were solicited from foreign governments and people who could benefit from a Hillary Clinton presidency in the form of a public charity. It wasn't organized that way. When people in the corrupt state of New York got around to disciplining Trump, Trump promptly and his people reached an agreement and paid the fine and are following the law. And if the law requires people to be supervised, they're going to be supervised if they want to do a charity again. That same standard needs to be addressed specifically to Chelsea Clinton. In a public charity, again, it's not supposed to be dominated by a family. By what right does Chelsea Clinton have a staff and an office in a very expensive set of locations around the world, flying either first class or private, staying in fancy hotels, getting all these crooked book deals and speech deals and insider investment opportunities, all this kind of stuff? By what right was she, of all the several thousand people at one point who worked for the Clinton Foundation, how did Chelsea Clinton get selected to be vice chair? Why is she on the board of it? When did she go on the board of it? What other candidates were considered? And why is this whole thing set up as a PR promotional campaign for Chelsea Clinton and Hillary Clinton? It's ridiculous. So if we go back in, if you look here in the section on Bill Clinton, it says he established, in 2001, he established the William J. Clinton Foundation. Now, significantly, you see it says William J. Clinton Foundation. There was no such thing in 2001 called William J. Clinton Foundation. No such entity existed at that time. Let's look here at this Twitter. This is Bill Clinton's Twitter page.
Nice.
Of course, I'm responsible for this, right? I mean, he has 11.4 million followers, and what does he tell the world? He was the founder of the Clinton Foundation. No, he wasn't.
Yeah. Well, but it says founder, comma, Clinton Foundation, and I'm sure he would argue.
Oh, he'll argue about anything.
That's a list of things that he did, and he founded, the IMAX theater at the Clinton place. So
Right.
He is a founder.
Right. There is no such thing as the Clinton Foundation. That legal thing doesn't exist, and he didn't found it. If he did found it, then there's nothing in the application dated December 23rd, 1997, that mentions him doing anything with the Clinton Foundation. And it wasn't founded in 2001. There was the Clinton Family Foundation that was established in December of 2001, but there's no such thing as Clinton Foundation that was founded at any time lawfully anywhere in the world, having to do with Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton. So go back again, Jason, if you would. Then Bruce Lindsay. Okay, here it says Bruce joined the foundation in 2001. There's no record of him being in the foundation in 2001 as general counsel and serving as CEO from 2003. There was no such title as CEO, and he's not in any paperwork for the Clinton Foundation in this time frame. Yet this is still on the freaking Clinton Foundation website right now. Okay, if you might want to hit it just to see. Let's see if we get solicited again.
Oh, we will.
Yeah, just to get another count out there. Oh yeah, what do you know? If you hit the X, there you have Bruce Lindsay.
And Cheryl Mills.
Right, another great one.
Speaking of Whitewater, she was clearing Whitewater documents out of Vince Foster's office
Right.
before federal investigators were allowed in there. So she's complicit with the cover-up of a murder.
And she's also, she was still working at the Clinton Foundation when she was in the State Department and heavily involved in Haiti, and set up an entity called Black Ivy, which I think has been monetizing some of the connections she derived in public service. So if we go back in to the next page. Now, this is getting a little wonky, and I freely admit that. So there were no audits of any type attempted, real audits, until one was submitted or created the 9th of June 2006. But it was, as we will demonstrate, have demonstrated, but as we'll do in the book, this thing should have been filed in the pulp fiction section of whatever library of bad accounting you want to create somewhere in the world on the banks of the Arkansas River. It's a joke, this piece of paper, the audit. Now, so that thing is issued the 9th of June 2006 by BKD. Prior to issuing that audit, this distinguished loser, frankly, Bruce Lindsay, signs his Bruce Lindsay signature on a document under penalties of perjury with the Secretary of State of Arkansas, which states, on the 28th of April 2005, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation is a corporation duly organized and existing under the state of Arkansas. And it's signed by the presiding director or officer who is deemed to be Bruce Lindsay. There's no evidence that Bruce was actually the presiding director on that date, okay? The 990 if you hit this 990 here, that link, the tax return that was filed after he signed this piece of paper is for a tax return for an entity called William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, not the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. And Bruce Lindsay's nowhere to be found in this document. Right, so this thing's, if you go down the page a little bit, you'll see at the very, this signed shortly thereafter. May 11th, they're asking for more time to get the return in, and if you go further down here, say, September 23rd, 2005, okay, he's not in this document. Right, so how did he actually, on what authority did he have to sign this thing saying he had amended the Articles of Incorporation as presiding director of the Clinton Foundation? If we go back into the slide, it says that he files this at 2:20 p.m. And it says in the Articles of Incorporation, the original articles say the name of the corporation, you see this corporation? Which is hereinafter referred to as the uppercase corporation, is the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. The amended version of the articles, which Bruce Lindsay, a lawyer, and supposedly CEO of the Clinton Foundation put in, although there's no evidence that that title existed or that he was that person, changes this genius, changes the articles, which are the controlling document of the corporation, to read, the name of the organization shall be the William J. Clinton Foundation. So it's not William J. Clinton Foundation, it's the William J. Clinton Foundation, but all they change is this one sentence. Instead of calling it the corporation, which is hereinafter referred to as a corporation, they delete that modifier, they delete that definition of the word corporation, and they replace it with something called organization, a term that is never referred to again in the balance of the Articles of Incorporation. So by doing that, they destroy this legal entity.
Well, but they wanted to do that on purpose, I think, right? This is lawfare tactics.
Well, no, this is Nancy Pelosi swallowing the hand grenade. I mean, this is just ridiculous to do this. After the fact, the 28th of April, somebody who claims to be the presiding director, who's an officer of the court, Bruce Lindsay, who's ultimately a highly paid person inside the Clinton Foundation, who's known Bill Clinton virtually his entire life, who is his, consigliere inside the White House, covering everything else up, working with Cheryl Mills. That dude decides that I'm so dumb, I'm going to amend these articles, just this one thing, and I'm not going to deal with the balance of the document, which I would need to do. So if you look at the next page.
Frank Rizzo recommends a contest to select the title for your book about the Clintons, Charles.
Well, maybe. So here's the balance of the Articles of Incorporation. And this is by my count. There are Articles 2 through 14, the various things that they talk about. The number of times that the term the corporation is used is 40 times in the balance of the document. You should have at least changed in every one of these things. You should have made organization a defined term. But now you've got articles which talk about something shall be the William J. Clinton Foundation, and you've got bylaws that refer to this thing as the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. So nobody knows what the real name of this entity is, and you're sowing confusion, you're sowing doubt, you're creating the type of fertile conditions for fraud where you can have all these bank accounts. You can have a the William J. Clinton Foundation account and a Presidential Foundation account and a William J. Clinton Foundation and different addresses and different post office boxes. This is precisely the set of conditions that fraudsters can exploit to have money wired over here to this account and then not put into the foundation, and over here and then spent on mistresses, and over here on this and not on political campaigns. And this is indefensible behavior. And you could say, if they'd been smart, what they would have done is get a bozo, some young kid, to say, hey, bozo, you want to be chief financial officer of the Clinton Foundation? And the bozo says, yeah, it's great. It's better than being a clown.
Do you like the London School of Economics?
Right. And he said, another bozo, you want to be general counsel of the Clinton Foundation? We'll let you call that. And you could work in Chicago, say, Scott Curran.
Yes.
And you take these young kids and say, why don't you sign this over here? You sign it.
It's pretty good, Charles.
and they didn't do that, though. Bruce Lindsay signs this, or somebody forging Bruce Lindsay's signature, if they forged it, puts this into the Secretary of State and destroys the Clinton Foundation legally. Right? So this is probably just after the FBI abandons their investigation of the Clinton Foundation. We don't yet know exactly in 2005 when they stopped, but the summary says they stopped sometime in 2005.
But we don't actually believe they are this incompetent, right? They were doing this all on purpose.
They thought, this is what happens when you say, all right, look, this is a lesson in the rules. Rules apply to other people. So we want this an in-your-face exercise. We want you to just, with impunity, take the rules and botch everything. Because you're never going to get caught, and this is a statement to the rest of the world. We are this powerful.
Really?
We could run it this horrifically, and nobody's going to touch us. And anytime somebody wants to complain about the Clinton, just like, the investigative journalists come to me and say, well, Charles, as serious as you talk about with all these 197 videos, they would have done something about it. That's the point. They're letting the world know nobody can touch them. They're that powerful. That's what they're doing here. And unless Barr and the powers that be do something about this, this message is going to get louder and louder and encourage more and more fraudsters to try the same thing.
Yeah.
So if we go to the next page, we're going to close here. This is a court order, another court order in a different case, okay, that was decided several months after this, 27 October 2005. If you hit the link there, Jason. This is a court case decided in Arkansas, still on their public record, and I've just excerpted part of it. And this is a case, I remember, they changed the name on April 25th, 2005, filing the name change on April 28th, 2005. This is a court decision issued in the Supreme Court of Arkansas, which still refers to an entity called the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, which doesn't exist. But it tricked this court.
Well, because with court, you basically just enter who you are, and I don't know that they do anything to check that.
Well, yes, they do. You'll see in a second. Though it's the heart of the case.
Oh, okay. Well, we've had fake people in court cases all over the place. This is all lawfare type stuff.
But this is, if we go into the slide, this is a court case. This is excerpting, these are actual excerpts from the case that I want people to focus on. And they recite the history. And they say the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation was created in 1997. Well, where's the evidence of that? There's no tax return. Where's the state? This is a case about the Clinton Foundation wants to get a rebate on sales taxes that were paid through the construction of the project. Now, if
it's not satisfied with the billions, they need the sales tax.
They want
as
everything,
well.
everything. And so, but the point here is, if you had gone through the process lawfully, you would have gotten your state, you would have gotten exempt under Arkansas law. You wouldn't have been charged sales tax. You would have told your contractor, look, I'll buy, I'm the foundation, I'll go buy the materials that you need to put into this construction project, and I've got a slip of paper over here saying from the federal government I'm exempt, and from the state of Arkansas I'm exempt, so there's no need for you to pay sales taxes on anything that you might have to pay sales taxes on to build the facility. There's no need for it because I'm not for profit. They didn't do it that way. They said, what we're going to do is we're going to litigate. And it says here, item 2 in the recitation of the history, the foundation chose downtown Little Rock. No, it didn't. Bill and Hillary did. We have that in City of Little Rock documents. We just went over that. Okay? It says here in this court case, 27 October 2, it has offices and employees in Arkansas and New York. Under what authority? There's no legal authority to have offices in New York, do projects around the world. Here's the court saying, well, whatever Bill wants, we're going to do. And here's a recitation of actions that occurred in August 2001, this, on May 1st, 2002, that, May 24th, 2000, and then June 5th, this stuff. You know, all this stuff happened, and for this court case, there's abundant correspondence and supporting documents, all this kind of stuff. This thing didn't exist. There's no lawful charity that could do any of this stuff. And so this rises to the level, as for some time, the idea that the FBI in Little Rock is investigating this is about as comforting as, you know, the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York will take an even closer look at it when they're done. We need to have people, rough and tumble, law and order people, who really understand that justice has to be administered fairly, descend on this project, if they haven't already. Yank people up out of their offices, put them in a holding pen, get them all the fuck out of Little Rock, right, and get down to the business of explaining to the people that with regard to this specific thing, this is not going to happen again. We are not letting this go on for decades. We're not letting this smug-ass Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, who thinks she's president of the United States today, we're not letting them rape and pillage around the world with impunity. We can't let them do that anymore, because if we do, it's only going to get worse.
Tom Spann wants you to be deputized and given a full staff. And Magic Key 43 wants to know if you're in direct contact with Huber. And before you answer, I would say that's the type of question that, irrespective of the answer, you're not going to be able to tell us something like that.
Yeah. I can say that the only conversations that I've had with the FBI occurred last year when they came to pester me about something that I had nothing to do with.
That was very cleverly and Bill Clintonly stated, because Huber's not part of the FBI.
Also true. Or any other government, U.S. government. So if we go to the next page, this whole saga continues. You know, July 18th, they do something else. Then by October 13th, 2004, there's a circuit court order, right, and all this. So there's a rich file here. And the basic essence of the file, there was a complex legal argument going back and forth of, you know, we want money back from the state of Arkansas for sales taxes that our contractor is saying we spent, you know, on a project. And I call bullshit on that. I don't believe they actually spent the money on the sales tax. But nonetheless, long legal argument ensues, back and forth and back and forth. At the same time, this Skip Rutherford and others are negotiating with the National Archives a long-term agreement wherein the National Archives are going to accept this poison chalice gift of the corrupt, non-accounted for properly, illegally organized and operated entity that's a fake foundation. They're going to enter into a license agreement with the National Archives, where they lie their asses off in the document when signing it on November 18th, 2004. So there's all this stuff in here. Here's one branch of the Clinton Foundation. Is Bruce Lindsay doing this work? You know, Scott Kern's not yet on the scene. Who was doing this work, putting the state of Arkansas through hell in a complex legal matter on top of all this other stuff, when they didn't have the time or the money, I suppose, to hire real accountants to account for the Clinton Foundation properly? Who was doing all this? And how come there's not a single grown-up in the room that said, you know, we're now talking about, if we get this wrong, we're screwing the National Archives, right? Because the National Archives is not allowed to take a gift from something that isn't a charity. It's just, that's not allowed.
Perhaps the tiger knows a gazelle that works in law.
That's probably right. So, you know, we look at this, and, you know, in the spirit of Christmas, you know, part of me says that we should put politics aside, and we shouldn't really, you know.
That's a very small part of it.
It's a very infinitesimally small part.
It's the toe.
Right. When you look at these Clintons and the Obamas and the Bushes, And the people who virtue signal their public service, but don't bring up the part about flying, with jets and having bodyguards who will, kill you if you look at them the wrong way, and
Right.
whose family are going to have all these special deals, and who rose from nothing or negative net worth to being and they ask you to celebrate their public service and venerate them, whatever. I think a different message needs to be sent. I mean, here you have in Trump. And I'll say it right out front. I was one of the first people to say Donald Trump's business interests and Melania's and the family should have been put in trust, because it's a stupid move not to do that.
What'll happen is that he didn't do it?
For the end of time, they're going to say, all these Democrats forever are going to say, see what happened after he left? He got this business deal and that business deal. They're going to challenge this and that. They should have put it all in trust right up front. They could get competent trustees to look after it and say, look, we're just going to, trustees will deal with this. I've got that legal argument.
He can't make Don Jr. the trustee?
No. You have to get truly independent trustees. They could have done that. There are plenty of competent people around the world who would have watched this gigantic fortune, made sure that it at least didn't lose that much money.
But wouldn't they steal it?
No. When you go in as a trustee, normally, you put, let's say, law firms in as trustees, or you start stealing from a trust, and you should get, and you do get in serious trouble. Unless you're the Clintons, or the Obamas, or the Bushes.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think that for all the people, there has to be a balancing here. For the Kathleen Willies, for the Juanita Brodericks, for the Kathy Sheltons, for the many victims, Paula Jones, the many victims of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, in business and politics and elsewhere, that we can't leave the story ending in a place where, it's okay that, Bill will die and Hillary will die and Chelsea will walk out with $500 million. That cannot be the story. That it's okay to take advantage of these women, that it's okay, this is a power game, we're all dead in the end. I came, I saw, I conquered, or as Hillary said about Libya, I came, I saw, he died. What difference does it matter? That's not the message that this generation can leave for other generations to come. And here Donald Trump and Barr and the other people, the real public servants who are watching this, have a historic opportunity to lay markers down, to drop a neutron bomb on the Washington, D.C. and Little Rock and other swamps, and tell a tale that will resonate to the ages, that this got to a point that we just couldn't cope with it anymore. We don't want the United States to fall victim the way Rome fell, an empire overstretched. We want the Trump wars to be a war against the swamp, not a war against Trump.
Yeah.
And on that message, hopefully we're all going to get a chance to watch and see, and maybe encourage people to get involved and do the right thing, have a Spike Lee moment here as we head into the balance of this year in 2020.
Absolutely. Well, Charles, another stunning presentation. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
These people who say there are no details or come into the chat with fake names and start putting in comments that have nothing to do with what we're talking about and then criticize my debate style, they don't understand. A long time ago, I made a video about what this is, and they say, oh, freedom of speech. They have freedom of speech if I block them from being in our chat. They just have to go somewhere else to use it.
Right.
We have a freedom to not be annoyed by them. So blocking somebody from an individual YouTube chat is not suppressing their freedom of speech. Anybody who comes in here with a fake name has no freedom of speech as far as I'm concerned. If they want to debate you or I, they should send us an email or a direct message under their real name with a serious bit of information to discuss. Otherwise, you come in here disrupting the chat, you're going to be immediately suspected of being a social engineer or a pain in the ass. Either way, you're going to get ejected. I want to thank all the people who gave us really good comments. I mean, the problem is, people are using the chat, first of all, to provide information that sometimes leads to important findings.
Yeah, very much so.
And these social engineers that want to crap it up and distract me, they have no legitimate purpose, so they get blocked. But I want to thank the people who've been giving us good comments. I definitely want to thank people who have utilized Super Chat on Crowdsource the Truth, too. As you know, Charles, the Jason Goodman channel is still unable to live stream. There was a malicious social engineering attack, and that's why when I see dopey people like Firewalk or whoever that was, they're suspected of being social engineers, because the show and I are constantly under social engineering attack, and the best way for viewers who support the show to counteract that is to show the social engineers that they can't win by becoming a sponsor at subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And Charles, as I speak, another wise ass has emerged who's telling me that Crowdsource the Truth is not a legal name. But the point is, everybody knows who I am. Now, this is someone who seems to be providing their email address with their YouTube channel, so I won't block them for being a social engineer, but I will warn them that being a wise ass is another way to get blocked. And everybody knows that Crowdsource the Truth too is me. So if somebody wants to, tell me who they are and provide me with their information, but appear under a pseudonym, that is acceptable. But just hurling insults from behind a fake name, I don't go for. Charles, thank you very much for a great show. Tomorrow, everybody's going to want to catch Light on Conspiracies with Ole Damagard, another sponsor-exclusive, fantastic show, and Unseen Libya with Jimmy and Joanne Moriarty. So it's a great time to sponsor the show. Have a great evening, everybody. See you tomorrow.